Hello and welcome to our class for week 14. This class will be focusing on supporting language and literacy development from kindergarten through primary grades for English language learners, dual language learners, or emergent multilinguals. So let's look at our agenda. We're going to first go over the digital developmental language portfolio and presentation, which is due on week 15. And then we're going to look at what is WIDA and how do we access information on proficiency in English for English language learners, dual language learners, and emergent multilinguals. So let's talk about the digital developmental language portfolio and the presentation first. So I'm going to urge you to look at the rubric that is on Blackboard and look at the exemplar that is also on Blackboard. So for this assignment, we are going to compile everything that you've been working on with your focal child during the semester. So you're going to include observations, you're going to include your family visit, you're going to include the assessments that you've completed on your focal child for language and literacy development. You're going to include the proposed plans to the environment. All of this is going to come together in a PowerPoint presentation. And the only difference here from all the assignments that you've done before is that since this is your final assignment, that you have a presentation component to this assignment. So if you look at the rubric, you're going to see that there is going to be some points allocated to presentation. And there were some points allocated to presentation to the environmental changes to the learning environment assignment. And those points are going to be allocated once I look at this presentation, because we're not going to do two presentations, one for the changes in the environment and one for the final portfolio. We're just going to do one presentation for the final portfolio, but since the final portfolio encompasses the changes that you propose for the learning environment, we're going to take this one presentation for both assignments. The points allocated for the presentation are going to go to both of these assignments. So what I'm going to urge you to do is look for a software, because what you're going to do is you're going to make your PowerPoint presentation and then you're going to record it and narrate it. So similarly as I do every week narrating a PowerPoint for classes for you to see, you're going to do the same with your portfolio. So I use Screencast-O-Matic for recording my presentations. So I would recommend using it. There's a free version that allows you to record freely up to 45 minutes. You are not recording 45 minutes. You have 10 to 15 minutes max for your presentation. So make sure that you practice and time it properly so that you don't go over the 15-minute mark. So you can use Screencast-O-Matic, you can use Panopto, you can use VoiceThread. All of these are softwares that you can find online that you can use to record, or the PowerPoint software has a narrated audio feature to it. So you could also narrate it within PowerPoint itself without using any other feature or any other software. But this feature within that Office software, that PowerPoint software. So let me know if you have any questions in terms of how to record it. But what you're going to upload is the narrated version of your PowerPoint presentation for your portfolio. So again, I urge you to look at the rubric, to look at the exemplar, and to find what software or what version of a narrated PowerPoint is going to be the one that is going to work the best for you. And this is due on week 15, which is a week from now. Okay, so let's get into why and how we work with this particular population of linguistically diverse students. So we have in the United States currently a standard-based instruction, and that I'm going to run you briefly through the history of standards and where do they come from, and particularly for English language learners, that's ELLs, or dual language learners as they're also referred to, that's DLLs, or the most recent, more sort of encompassing term for this linguistically diverse population of students is emergent multilinguals. So instead of thinking about bilingualism in just two languages, we're thinking about children that bring in a full linguistic repertoire and that may speak many languages, more than just two, and they might be learning these languages as they are also acquiring and learning English. So in the 1980s, there was an education reform that happened because students weren't performing up to par. In comparison with other developed nations, students in the US were not performing as well. So there was this education reform that was focused on accountability and looking for who do we, as a country, make responsible or accountable for students' learning, and how do we hold ourselves accountable for our students' learning. So one way to hold ourselves accountable is to have a benchmark, something that we're shooting for. So standards were created in terms of this is the minimum requirement that we want from our students. And standards are created per grade level and within grade level per content area. So the standards then are going to guide curriculum design and are going to guide instructional planning. So both the ways that we design curriculum, and sometimes curricula are designed by curriculum designers and people outside the classroom, and sometimes curricula are designed by the teachers who are delivering the curriculum. But it typically, when you walk into a classroom, we're going to find that a teacher has many different curricula for each different subject matters that she or he teaches in that particular grade level. So a standards-based instruction hinges on two main points. One is differentiated instruction and the other one is content-based instruction. So differentiated instruction is all modifications that we make to the curriculum and to the delivery or the instruction itself in order to meet the particular needs of each and every student that we have. And so it's differentiated particularly for the students that we have in the classroom. So you take the curriculum, you look at the lessons that you need to teach as a teacher, and then look at your students and what the needs are for each and every one of them, and then modify the delivery of that curriculum so that the instruction meets the needs of your students and is differentiated for the specific needs of your students. Content-based instruction is going to be focused on knowledge and content. And so we know that if we look at English language arts, for example, we're going to have certain standards for English language arts, and we're going to have certain standards for reading, and we're going to have certain standards for writing in this subject matter. So the content of English language arts is going to be delivered through these sets of standards, and these sets of standards are going to guide the curriculum. It's going to be facilitated for children to learn how to read and to learn how to write, and the skills that accompany these two main areas of language expression in that particular grade that we're looking at. So for this, we have a slew of standards that we can use in order to design curriculum and to plan and deliver instruction. So we have the Maryland standards, we have the Maryland College and Career Ready standards, and when we look at those, we're going to see that there are, for each subject matter and for each grade level or cluster of grades, we're going to find standards that we can use in order to plan activities and instruction for our students. We also have the Common Core state standards that are national standards, and we currently have them in English language arts and in math from pre-K through 12th grade. For English language learners or dual language learners or emergent multilinguals, we have a couple of sets of standards. We have first the TESOL standards that came out in 2006 that are looking at English language proficiency from pre-K to 12. And then we have the WIDA standards that are looking at English language proficiency from K to 12, and then there's also some early learning standards in WIDA. And WIDA came out with its first set of standards in 2007, and then in 2012 there was an amplification to these standards, and in 2020 there is sort of a new edition that is coming out, and I have linked, if you look at just the non-narrated PowerPoint of this lecture for week 14, you'll see that in the notes areas of this particular slide, there are some URLs and links there. But I also put some links to the WIDA standards and some actual PDFs of the WIDA standards and the amplification of the standards in Blackboard under week 14. Okay, so what is WIDA, and what is sort of the formal assessment that we have for English language learners, dual language learners, and emergent multilinguals? So WIDA is a consortium, and a consortium that started with very few states that came together to develop standards for this particular population of linguistically diverse students. And it was born in 2003. I'll walk you through the history in just a second. But from that consortium, that coming together of these states, then there were standardized tests developed to be able to gauge English proficiency for non-native English speakers. And this test for English language learners is called the Access Test. And currently the Access Test, initially it was just done in a paper and pencil style, but currently it's able to be completed digitally. So through a computer, students can answer these questions, and the test scores can be accessible then to teachers, so that teachers know what the English proficiency level of the students are, and so they can take that information and plan accordingly. So the access for ELLs 2.0, which is the digital version, there's a link. So if you again go to the non-narrated version of this presentation, you'll see the link there that you can click on it or copy and paste it into your browser and go and see what the Access test looks like. In Maryland, we use the Access test to determine English proficiency for students. So let me tell you a little bit about WIDA. So in 2001, when the No Child Left Behind Act was launched by the U.S. government, there was a refocus and a highlight of the linguistically diverse student population. So focused on English language learners. And because of that, because there was this focus of not wanting these students to fall through the cracks and to be actually learning at their best or highest potential in our classrooms, WIDA was born. And it was born in 2003, and it was given a grant to the Wisconsin Department of Public Education, so the state of Wisconsin, and that was WIDA's first home. Based on that, those monies that came from the grant, WIDA was developed. Then in 2004, WIDA came out with the English language proficiency standards, the first set of standards, which served as the basis for the access test for English language learners. And what they were looking for, again, was to establish what the English language proficiency was for these students, so that teachers could then instruct them accordingly. WIDA also has created professional development workshops to support educators and teachers that are in the states that are members of the WIDA consortium. So in 2006, WIDA moved to its current home in the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and there it continued to expand, and it continued to develop and improve the comprehensive system of assessments that it has, and the instructional support for teachers and educators and practitioners that are working with this multilingual learner population. So today, the Access for English Language Learners has an online version, as I was explaining before, and it includes tests from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they also have an alternate access test for students that have significant cognitive disabilities, so they can modify the test to accommodate for these disabilities that the students might have, in addition to their English proficiency, and to be able to gauge exactly what the English proficiency is, regardless of that cognitive disability. And there is also a WIDA screener and a WIDA model. And a WIDA model is a kit that teachers can use on their own in their classroom to assess students' English proficiency quickly. Because one of the things, and this was true in WIDA when the access test was in pen and paper, excuse me, when they only had available WIDA in a pen and paper format, the results got to the teachers months after the student had taken the test. So the proficiency level wasn't as accurate because many months in some cases had passed, so it wasn't as, that was the proficiency level that was recorded in the test was the one a couple months beforehand, and the student wasn't there any longer. So the WIDA model is a kit that teachers could use in the classroom and quickly gauge and immediately have the responses of the students for that particular kit or that particular assessment tool, and be able to adapt their planning and their instructional approach for that particular student, because they had immediately the results. But now the access test is online, and it's the access to the teachers to the scores of the students is much faster than it was before. But the WIDA model kits still exist. So the WIDA consortium has grown. It started with 3 states, and it's now grown to 40 states. And so it has a very expanded use and implementation in the U.S. So one of the things that is interesting to know for us specifically is that Maryland joined the WIDA consortium in 2011. So Maryland is part of those 40 member states of the consortium. And another important thing to know is that WIDA also has not only the standards from for K through 12, and they have them in English and they have them in Spanish. The access test also is for K through 12 children, and it can measure their proficiency in English, but it can also measure the student's proficiency in Spanish, because there's a Spanish version of the access test. But there are also WIDA standards for children that are younger than K. So children that are in preschool, children that are in 0 to 3 kind of environment. So we have the WIDA early learning standards that support that particular population. I think it goes from 2.2 to 5.2 years of age. What else do we have here? There's, again, under this slide, you'll find some links that you can access more information if you want. And all of this is to help you, because all of us are going to be in classrooms where there's going to be at least one English language learners, if not more. There are some classrooms in Baltimore City that half of their population are English language learners. So I want you to have an idea of what to do with this population, how to plan for them, how to instruct and teach them in the best way possible. So this is one of the examples, or it is an example of the WIDA proficiency level descriptors for productive language. So in productive language, which is expressive language, we look at speaking and writing. And you're going to see that WIDA is going to have standards for the 4 domains of expressive and receptive language. So we're going to have an expressive, we're going to have speaking and writing, and in receptive we're going to have listening and reading. And for all of those domains, there are going to be 6 levels of development. So you're going to see that level 1 is entering, level 2 is emerging, level 3 is developing, level 4 is expanding, level 5 is bridging, and level 6 is reaching. When the child is between level 5 and 6, the child is considered to be proficient in English. And if the child is, for example, placed in a transitionary program within a school, at this point they would transit out of that. They would transition out of that program, and they would be immersed in mainstream all English education. Or if what they have is a TESOL support, a TESOL teacher supporting the student, then once they reach this level 5 and 6, they would not have that TESOL support any longer. In the U.S., typically dual language programs or bilingual programs don't go past 3rd grade in public schools. And that is a problem because we can have newcomer students insert themselves in the school in 1st or in 2nd or even in 3rd grade, or even after in 4th or 5th grade. And so if the programs and the supports only go up to 3rd grade, then there's no supports for English language learners that come into the school system beyond that grade. So that's one thing to think about. There are other schools that have programs that go farther than 3rd grade, but typically that's where they tend to end, which again is a bigger issue. But here in this slide, you can see then that the standards are going to be grouped, focused on this either productive language or expressive language, or they're going to be in the receptive language with reading and listening. They're going to be highlighted for a cluster of grades. So we have K through 1, 2 to 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think is the next cluster, and so on, right? So you're going to see that the standards are going to be for the clusters. The standards are identified for particular skills. So discourse dimension, sentence dimension, word and phrase dimension, and so on. And then they're going to be grouped in those levels of proficiency. And so if you get your students' access scores back and they are at level 2, you know that this is what they should know to do already, know how to do it. And then you can look at level 3, and this is where they're aiming towards. So they're moving. You want to help scaffold them to go from the level 2 to the next level up, right? So the level 3, if that's where they are. So you look at where your access score is telling you that your student is at, and then you try to help them to move to the next level. So that's one of the usefulness of the standards, is not only going to tell you, okay, this is what the students know how to do once you get the results, depending on the level that they're at that moment, but also it's going to help you know what comes next and what you are aiming for and what you're trying to help the students attain. Okay, so this was a very brief overview of what WIDA is and how we can help support English language learners. I'm going to walk you through the homework for this week, and you're going to see that one of the things that we're going to do this week is a discussion board activity in which you're going to try to highlight what kinds of strategies or activities or materials you would have in your classroom to support this particular population. Thinking about kindergartners, because that's the age group that we're focusing on right now. So thinking about kindergartners, how would you support kindergartners that are linguistically diverse? And that's number 2 of our homework, which is the discussion board activity. Number 1 is complete the readings. So we're finishing with the Sotomayor and Martel book. Read the conclusions. We're wrapping up the Otto book as well, so read chapters 9 and 10. Participate in the discussion board activity, which I just mentioned, and then turn in your plan change for language learning environmental assignment. So in that assignment, we talked about that last week, and if you still have questions, let me know, or run through the narrated PowerPoint from last week, and at the beginning of that lecture, you'll see that I talk about that assignment and go through what you should be focusing on in order to complete it. But that assignment is due this week on week 14. So that is all for this week, and I will talk to you again next week.